Welcome to a pivotal moment in the world of broadcast as we proudly present the Men's Mental Health Show featuring the renowned Larry Mabry in collaboration with the Maassen Group. This essential exploration of men's mental health wouldn't be possible without the invaluable support of Rainier Avenue Radio World. Now, let's dive into this crucial conversation with Larry Mabry and the Maassen Group. Your mental well-being matters. Here's Larry Mabry.
Welcome on this beautiful March 18th, 2024, with this beautiful weather out here as we roll into the spring. We have a couple days before we actually officially have spring, and I'm pretty sure people are doing their spring cleaning, kind of looking at some things they want to do for the spring as we roll into the nice weather coming up. Today's topic I wanted to talk about is who are the best teachers in your relationships, right? So think about the relationships you've had, whether it be intimate, whether it be job, whether it be coach type of relationship. Who are the best teachers? And, today I was thinking about, the best teachers, and I wanted to kind of talk about that. I feel like a lot of times, we kind of take for granted those people that are very challenging. And for those individuals that play sports, I'm going to go to my sports heads here for a second. I noticed that the people who kind of challenge you, they kind of actually help you become a better player, right? And in terms of relationships, those individuals that challenge you, they help you become a better person. And that might be emotionally, that might be through some pain points, that might be changing your perspective on some things. And I recall I had a relationship back in the day. Individual was very actually manipulative, and it actually helped me grow in a lot of areas. And I would say it improved my emotional quotient. For those individuals who don't know that, we have an emotional side, we have a spiritual side, we have a mental side, psychological, and dealing with this particular individual kind of helped me improve my emotional quotient. And some people may say, well, what is that? Well, we all have an emotional side, and sometimes our emotional quotient can be a little weak. And if we're dealing with some people who maybe manipulate or take advantage, they kind of force you to tap into yourself to realize, well, what's really important? Is it really important for me to allow that individual to kind of commandeer my emotions, or is it better for me to make sure I take stock of my emotions and I basically decide on what I want to focus on? So that part was really important. So think about, like, who determines helping you get that skill set in your relationships. If for those people who play sports, you may want to chime in. Was there a particular coach that maybe told you to maybe try a different type of stance? If you play maybe softball, or let's say if you play tennis, maybe there's a particular coach that, said, okay, you know what? Your two-hand backhand is great. However, I want you to try this. And a lot of times whenever you're learning something new, it's very challenging. It feels uncomfortable. It's very awkward. You're still trying to kind of get your sea legs with it. You're like, man, struggling with yourself. Like, do I really want to do this? Right. And it just doesn't feel safe. And so you have to kind of work through that. But as you work through that type of uncomfortability, it actually makes you a stronger person. And I want to kind of digress and kind of talk about something real quick. So as we roll into spring, hopefully people are getting out more. One place I would like to recommend for those individuals, if you have not been to, is make sure you guys take a look at Deception Pass. Highly recommend it. If you can get out there and take a look at it. When I initially came here 4 years ago, I visited a friend of mine here, and they were like, you know what? We got to take you someplace. And I was like, really? And they're like, yeah. I said, okay, cool. And they didn't really, they didn't tell me what it was. They just said, okay, we got a surprise for you. We got up really early, and we drove and we drove and we drove. It seemed like we were driving for like days. And what was really beautiful was what we walked out on the actual ledge. It's like a little bridge. And when I walked on the bridge, I realized, well, I didn't think that I was actually afraid of heights, but being elevated, I noticed like a little bit of like trembling for two reasons. One, the beautiful view was very captivating. Just I just felt like, wow, this is just a beautiful experience. But also too, as I was walking out, I was like, man, this is the only thing that's kind of holding me. And it was like the mountains and the water and just being so elevated, and just like, even though I knew I was safe, it was like that uncomfortability, right? And when I walked out in the middle, because when you go to Deception Pass, you're kind of in between two mountains, and you just see a beautiful view. And in that experience, it was very, very, very uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. Um, and my friend, you know, we had a relationship where I was just honest. I said, hey, this this feels like, even though I know I'm okay, because I'm actually standing here, I'm not normally afraid of heights, but my legs were just like struggling. And so I was having like this inner dialogue with myself. And I really enjoyed what my friend said, because she said basically you're in a state of what they call having the uncomfortable feeling. And you have to kind of face the uncomfortable, even though you're kind of comfortable. And it was kind of weird, but it was true. It was like I knew I was okay, but I was feeling uncomfortable. And so through that experience, I wasn't the same, right? I wasn't the same person. And we walked off the ledge or the bridge, so to speak. We took pictures, and that experience was what I would call a cathartic experience, and it actually motivated me to actually move out here, because at the time I was just visiting. But I share that to express that when we go through these relationships, sometimes it can be very, very, very uncomfortable, right? Think about a relationship that you've noticed in your life that's been very uncomfortable. But as you've grown through that experience, what have you gained through it? Have you noticed that there's certain boundaries now that you set in life? Through that experience with me, when I came out here, there were certain people I had to cut off my life. And I realized that where they were going and where I was going, we weren't going in the same direction. And at the end of the day, we always have a choice, right? And because we have these choices, sometimes we forget, because we kind of get caught up in, paying bills and doing these certain things. But at the end of the day, we always have a choice. And so I realized that when I made the choice to move out here, I created different friends and different experiences, and my life changed. That uncomfortability was kind of like my foundation. And ever since I've actually been out here in Washington, I've noticed, for me, whenever I'm comfortable, that's when I get a little concerned, because I realize that at some point I'm not growing. And so think about that. Like, if you notice like things are becoming really comfortable, like, have you noticed in your life, have you grown when they've become really comfortable? Right? You When you're learning a new task, or you're learning a different role, or you're getting different experiences, that's when you kind of enjoy life, and you experience life, and you see like the zest of life. And so it's important to have a healthy balance with that, right? And so if you kind of have a relationship that's just like boring, then at some point it doesn't really add any flavor or depth to your life. So it's important to kind of challenge certain things. So with that said, think about, what are you doing in your life that's creating a experience where you're growing, where it's a little bit of a challenge, right? Maybe you've been at a position for a long period of time, and you're really, really good at what you do. And that's cool. But at some point, either you need to learn other skills, or at some point you may feel like, you know what, I reached the top level of money I can make. I kind of know what's up, and that's cool. But am I really growing? And as humans, we always evolve. And so as you have these relationships that kind of force you to think outside the box, it actually helps enrich you on deeper levels. One, as I shared earlier, it can help you with your emotional quotient. Two, it can also help you as far as your understanding of yourself. What I find is, as I experience different people, I learn more about myself. So going back to that situation where I first came here, I realized that I really enjoy being outside. That's a really cool experience. In Washington, for a lot of people who grew up here, man, there's like a richness of so many cool things in terms of nature out here that people just, I think, sometimes take for granted. I do feel like there are some people that do get caught up with a lot of the beauty here. But what I also realize is when you spend time in nature actually, I feel like it communicates to you. It teaches you certain things. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was expressing how he took his sons out and they went on a hiking trip. And he parked, I think the hike was maybe about 10 miles, and he parked his car like the bottom of the hill, and his friend parked the car like at the top at another location where they were going to end up. And him and his sons went on that experience, and he said that through that experience he learned so much more about his child, as well as them learning more about their dad, because there was experiences that they had with nature that you can't get in the classroom, you can't get through a TV show, you can't get through a rap video. It's real world experiences that just transcend and change your perspective. And so what's cool about Washington is there's so many rich experiences here that you can just get caught up with, and it's you're not the same. You know, you have the mountains, you have the water, you have this beautiful view with all this particular greenery, and then the weather, right? And then depending where you go, there's different lushness of green all over the place. And certain hikes and things I've experienced, I mean, you're just not the same person, right? How do you express that to somebody, right? And for those people who live here, that's something you experience. For me, coming from another state, the first thing I told my friend when I was on the top of that particular bridge, I said, "Man, people don't really know this about Washington, because most people from different states, when they think Washington, they're thinking Washington D.C. They don't really think Washington State, right? Because people don't really talk about it. But when you come here and you experience it, it's like, man, I mean, it's like a hidden secret, right? And that break actually brings me to abundance. And part of being abundant is realizing that you have everything you need right here, a wealth of everything, right? But it's a mindset. It's totally a mindset, right? And so another thing that kind of came to my mind as well was, as we move into spring, what are you clearing out of your mind? Are you clearing out the clutter from the past? Are you clearing out some of the past relationship type of baggage? Are you clearing out some of the mental mindsets that you had? This is a perfect time to actually do a mental assessment. You know, we take showers. Well, hopefully people take showers, but for the most part, people take showers every day. But how often do we do or take a mental shower, right? Where we just do a deep dive introspection and say, you know what, this thought program or this thought process, I just need to obliviate and just get out of my mind and move towards something else. How have you evolved? Right. And this is not to judge, this is just to kind of do self-reflection, right? Are you the same person you were last year? And maybe that's okay, right? But think about maybe one evolution or one type of step that you would like to take to change, to grow, right? Think about that. Recently, I was playing Digimon with a friend of mine, and we were talking about Digivolve. And I just started thinking, like, wow, you know, even the cards are evolving. How far are we evolving? And I thought about just how technology has evolved for those individuals who are in their 50s. I remember when we used to have those phones that actually were on the streets. They were called payphones. And then after that, we had pagers, right? And now we have cell phones, smartphones, flip phones before that. We even had car phones. how have you evolved? Have you noticed that you're evolving? And even though technology and things have changed around us, it's our responsibility to make sure we're evolving as a person, as a particular emotion within your psychology. So, how are you evolving? Right? What resistances are you allowing versus allowing things to let go? And I want to bring this up because I noticed for myself as I started letting things go and like not really putting a lot of emotional weight on things, for me, life got a lot easier. And I give an example. Back in Detroit, I would say that the energy was very different compared to the West Coast. For example, if you go outside, you say, "Hey, what's up?" to people, people were a little bit more defensive. The energy was more defensive. Whereas here, certain areas where I notice it, but for the most part, people are a little bit more relaxed here. And I realized that, that was a mentality that I was carrying that I had to let go. I just had to be honest with myself, right? And I realized that, what you are is what you attract. So if you're carrying a lot of animosity, if you're being a lot of, stressed out or, giving off this energy where you're unapproachable, then people aren't going to want to approach you, right? So think about one thing that you can kind of change within yourself to be a little bit easier, right? And I also noticed as I was communicating with certain people that the language I was using, because in Detroit, things are a little bit more aggressive. And I realized I'm like, man, I guess I could communicate that a little different. And as I practiced that, I realized that people were coming at me a little bit different, right? And it's something that you're always working on. Like no one's reached a particular level. It's always a level of evolution. Okay. Also, too, think about karma. I want to bring that up for a second. Has anybody ever heard of the word karma? What does that mean to you? And karma actually can go two ways, right? Some people say, what you put out comes back. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree with that? I agree. I think kind of what you put out, you do get back. But also too, I feel as though it's all about your energy, kind of how you flow. Oh, thank you. Somebody just reached out and asked the question, how to deal with derealization, feeling like you aren't really there and you feel like you are watching a movie. Really good question. Um, the first thing that I would do in that situation is to like check yourself. And let me kind of clarify that. If you're having this derealization, the question I have for you is, what's going on with your thoughts? Are you caught up on what we call cognitive distortions, right? Are there certain things that you're focusing on and you're thinking that's your reality, right? And the second thing is, what are you doing to kind of balance yourself, right? Um, are you doing certain types of things to make sure you regulate or clear out some emotional baggage, right? Because sometimes you may have that feeling and that might be what you need to say, you know what, I need to do something different. Are you happy with yourself? Right. And these are honest questions you have to ask yourself. Are you doing things that's bringing joy to yourself? Right. Okay. Okay. Great. So you say it's happening a lot. Okay. Well, you know what? You can reach out to me personally, and we can talk more about this. But one thing I would say for you is I would suggest some things called cognitive distortions. And basically, I did talk about that in one episode. And these are thoughts that we think about that we think are ours, but they're really not ours. And we take them on as ours. And unfortunately, these thoughts can give us negative types of views of ourselves. It could be things that we picked up from our family members. It could be things that we picked up from our social environment, and we kind of wear them and we think it's us. And so the first thing I would say is kind of look at those to see, because you might be actually having some cognitive distortions. And these are thoughts that you think are yours, but they're really not. And so once you kind of can see those and you realize, oh, wait a minute, I've been thinking these thoughts. Let me work towards the next step. I would recommend with that would be we kind of look at those thoughts and we reframe these thoughts. And by reframing, basically, we give them less energy, because when we focus on a thought, basically it energizes it, and then we attract more things that connect to it. But if we neutralize the thought, I'll give you an example. If we say something like, oh, you know what, I won't be good at something, right? If you think that, and then you'll think about the situations that happened where you weren't good. But if we say, you know what, maybe today I'm just not having a good day. On another day I can do a little bit better. You notice that's a little bit lighter. And then what happens is we don't give it energy. And then we look at situations where we actually have been successful in things. And then we can kind of bring more energy to that. So hopefully that helps you with that. But also too, I would suggest with you is, think about some things that you like about yourself, right? What are some things that you care about yourself, right? I think those things will be very, very important. Oh, okay. So I'm also noticing too, you say you're overworked. Um, well, yeah, if you're working a lot, typically, your body's going to be taxed. You need some time to process, right? What are you doing to give yourself balance, right? And then a lot of times we kind of get into this survival mode, right? But at the end of the day, if we take some time to nurture ourselves, give us some time to compress, then we actually end up doing a lot better in that situation. So I would say take a break. And I know you may say, oh, I need the money and this and that. I got you, but you want to kind of take a break. Also, too, let me finish reading here what you said here. I feel like time is passing too fast and we don't have enough hours in a day to accomplish things night and day. Yes, that's true, especially with daylight savings time. But what I notice is if there's certain things that you can do as far as your mental, you can kind of change your brain to be okay with allowing, and you'll notice that you'll actually end up adding time. Like you'll basically create situations where things will happen for you instead of you feeling like you have to do that. But there's a way we have to do that. And so if you want more, you can kind of reach out to me, 586-719-5193. But I can show you certain strategies to help you with that, because you're correct. With daylight savings time and just with a lot of the pressures that we have, it does feel like things are going faster. However, if we kind of restructure our brain and we focus on being in the moment, what happens is we actually create more time. I know you may think, well, he's crazy, but no, I'm serious. You actually end up creating more time. Or at least what happens is certain things that you put a lot of stake on, you find that you won't prioritize those things. And as you let them go, you realize, man, they weren't as important. So you start to kind of focus on what's really, really important, which is your well-being, your life, how you feel about yourself, the things that you prioritize that's important for you. A lot of times you'll find out that when you're running around, you're doing a lot of stuff for other people. And when you do a self-assessment, you're like, you know what? I need to kind of refinalize and do some things a little bit different. Okay. Okay. Med student also needs to work, pay fees, literally feel like I have no time. Yep, I understand that. And so you might need to take a step back and understand if you have a lot of pressure. So what I would recommend in that situation is maybe like if you're working 7 days, maybe take one day, right? If you're typically working 7, maybe take one day and that day focus on you, like focus on self-care, focus on, making sure you do your laundry, making sure you do things that you enjoy doing. And I suggest that because what ends up happening is you start to add to yourself, because basically if we look at ourselves like deposits of banks and we give ourselves emotional type of energy, we give love to ourselves, well, we build up our emotional deposit. And as we build up our emotional deposit, what ends up happening, we have a huge growth of emotional well-being, right? But if we're feeling depleted because we're giving ourselves to so many things, then at the end of the day, who's giving to you, right? No one can give to you more than you. So I would recommend, if you're busy, I know you're busy, is maybe take an hour, a couple hours, or a day where you focus on you. It could be meditation, it could be going for a walk, it could be doing those things that you really enjoy to do. And then as you do that, try to make that as part of your regular schedule. And you'll notice in time that you'll feel a little bit less overwhelmed. And certain things you may have to let go. Or what happens is as you open up your brain, you'll realize you'll have more mental power to come up with better ideas to execute some of those things you need to execute. So hopefully that should help you out. Okay, guys. As we get closer to close here, I want to say, Metro Speeds Weekly will return this Thursday on Rainier Avenue Radio this week at 7 o'clock. Sorry, Metro Sports Weekly. My bad. And so make sure you guys tune into that. And right after me today will be Better Together and Living Powerfully with beautiful host Dr. Tracy Harrell from 6 to 7. So make sure you guys take a look at that. I want to thank you, Chess Bader, for reaching out, and those other individuals. Appreciate you guys reaching out. Hopefully that was helpful. Thank you. I'm glad that was helpful. Again, tune in next week. Make sure you tell your friends. Hopefully I can benefit some people. Again, if you guys want to reach out, feel free to reach out here at 586-719-5193. You can shoot me a text, put RAR, so that way I know it's you, and we'll do what we can to help you out. Okay, one other thing too I would suggest to you for helping you out too is making sure that every day you show a little bit of gratitude to yourself. You know, a lot of times we do a lot of stuff for other people, and I know if you're a medical person, you're doing a lot of stuff for the community. It's important to make sure you give yourself some love, right? So just take stock, just acknowledge yourself, just say thank you, and make sure you give yourself that emotional deposit. And it might just be 5 minutes a day, right? Start with 5 minutes a day, be consistent with it, and you'll notice after a period of time that you'll notice it'll come back to you. So just keep that in mind. Appreciate you guys reaching out. Hopefully those people that tapped in for our mental health today, this is beneficial. And we'll see you guys next week.